There we go. Hey, there we go. How you doing, guys? Oh my God, what a crowd, what a crowd.
Look at that, it doesn't end. It's just a sea of
humanity. Sea of humanity. I hope.
All right, let's get comfortable. Let's get locked in
All right.
for a little bit. So, look, I love LA Comic-Con. This is one of the first comic conventions. I was coming here back when it was Stan Lee's Kamikaze. Anybody else? Was Stan Lee's Kamikaze?
That was the last time I was here. I was here when Stan Lee was here. I think it was 2018, I believe.
2018?
2018.
Where does the time go, Mike?
It flies. It flies.
It really does. Now, the last time I was here was last year. But the one thing I love about this convention is that everybody comes and shows out with their major fandoms. We see it with the cosplay. I see a Scarlet Witch back there. I love the cosplay I see. But I gotta ask you, Mike, what is your big fandoms?
Oh my God, fandoms, Jesus. I mean, I'm old school, so everything that I like happened and then they rebooted it pretty much. You know, it's like, so I see everyone and you guys see your version, your generation of Superman. You know, I was a Christopher Reeve guy, Lou Ferrigno guy. You know, everybody that did stuff, you know, when I was a kid, you know, you guys have rebooted, so it's like, you know, I was, Linda Carter is like Wonder Woman. Like, you know, I had my own generation. So I love that you guys have your own, and that's kind of how it works.
Now, looking back on your career, I know you grew up in the South, in a small town, but looking back on your career, was there a performer that you saw where you said, you know what, I need to do this for a living? That performance was absolutely incredible.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was, you know, like most of my generation, I think Denzel Washington sort of inspired me. Yeah. I mean, even before that, I mean, I'm sort of a cinephile. People threw that word around, but I watched a lot of stuff growing up. And Sidney Poitier, obviously, seeing, you know, him was very important to me. But then, you know, obviously, like everybody, I mean, look, Paul Newman, Steve McQueen, and Bruce Lee. I mean, Bruce Lee was like, I was like, you cut me, man, I'd taste my blood and I'd scream, bro. I was like, yeah, come on, let's go. Yeah.
You know, back to you, since you are a cinephile, what's a comfort film that you can have on the background on repeat as you're getting throughout your day?
Oh, you know what? Oh my God, there's a handful of films, and I wouldn't call them comfort films because when I turn something on, I usually want to watch it and experience it again, and because it gives me the same emotions, usually, or different ones at some point. So if I was going to say comfort film, something I could play because I've seen it so many times, I could let Godfather, and maybe I could let Goodfellas. I mean, it's hard because I want to pay attention. Certain scenes come up and I'm starting to focus, but there's certain films like that I've seen so many times. But in general, my go-to films every year that I try to just run through at some point are like Paul Thomas Anderson's Boogie Nights, Magnolia. I try to watch, It's a Wonderful Life, which is like my favorite film, at least once a year, even if it's not Christmas. I love to watch The World According to Garp, something that people don't know much about, but I love that film so much. So there's a couple films like that I just really love to watch, you know, because it makes me have this emotion of roller coaster ride, you know.
I love that you mentioned PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson, because One Battle After Another is quite incredible.
I gotta go see it. Have you got anybody seen that?
Anybody see One Battle After Another?
Not yet? Okay, Bo.
It's incredible. It's an incredible film. Paul Thomas Anderson crushes it. But speaking of him, is there a dream director that you'd like to work with? And is it PTA?
Yeah, PTA is definitely one of my dream director to work with for sure. I mean, there's a long list of directors that I probably want to work with, but he's definitely at the top of that list. You know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now let's talk about Luke Cage, because let's hear it for Luke Cage. There we go.
Hey, yeah, there we go.
Now, I don't want to ask you if you're coming back because I feel like you've gotten asked that question a ton of times.
Don't ask.
I do want to ask about your experience with the show when you were there. So first of all, what was your favorite memory that just sticks out to you when you first arrived on set of Luke Cage?
First arrived on set, I guess overnight shoots were always the toughest. Like having an overnight shoot where you're like shooting at 2 or 3 in the morning and you're like tired, but you've been sitting around for about an hour while they're setting up a shot, and your body's like, why are we not in the bed yet? You know, what's happening, bro? I'm like ready to go to sleep. What are we doing? And it's like, I gotta go work for another 3 hours. We were doing, I think, that raid of Crispus Atticus building where like he goes in and he like, you know, with the car door, knocks it, you know, that whole thing, that whole sequence was shot, I think, in 2 days or 2 long nights. So that was memorable because we're fighting time, we're fighting to get this done before the sun comes up. And I remember we had a scene where I'd gone through, worked my way through the entire building and beat up a lot of the, bad guys, right? And a lot of the good guys had thrown them in the ceiling and thrown them through the wall. And I'd gotten into this room, and I remember the director had said, I had a piece of like rebarb or something in my hand, like some sort of wrench or something, a weapon, right? And Luke Cage doesn't need weapons, he's like, he can just, whatever, right? And I remember I got into the room, but I had already used that. So in television and film, you have a continuity thing. And so it didn't make any sense that a thing would just disappear. So we were in this moment. I had just kicked down this big, sort of like cell wall in the hallway with my foot, iconic shot. And I was in this room, and everybody crowds in the room, and I'm by myself. It's like 20 guys, and I take the thing and I throw it away, and I tell them to come on, let's go. And it was one of those moments where it's like I'm beating up these guys. It's all choreographed, sort of, but it's kind of messy. And I've got to take the couch, and I clear the room with the couch, knock about 10 guys over, and then I throw the couch, launch it out of the window. It's just like I remember that night because it was such a melee of just violence, and I was so tired. And we got the stuff done, and it turned out really well. But I remember just being exhausted, and the time when I got off, the sun's coming up, and your body's like, I want to go to sleep now, right? But I had been doing nights, and it's just weird because I got to my bed, and I'm just like, I couldn't go to sleep because I was so wide awake from all this adrenaline so it's hard on the body when you film at nights. But I remember that thinking to myself, ooh, this is tough, and I don't know how long I can keep doing this,
And then you reflected back on your one of your idols, Bruce Lee, and said, how did that guy do all that stuff, right?
Well, Bruce Lee was a real martial artist. I mean, that guy was like, he ate, slept, and breathed martial arts, and he's just a machine. So, yeah, Bruce Lee was an inspiration for sure. Oh, by the way, if you guys eventually come on my booth if you get a chance, but I'm gonna probably I just talked to my buddy James Liu, who was the fight choreographer, stunt coordinator for the first season of Luke Cage, and he won an Emmy for that. So he's gonna be here tomorrow saying hello. So hopefully if he's around, you guys come by the table and say hello to him too.
That's incredible. That's so awesome.
Yeah, James Liu.
Now, growing up, were you a comic book fan, or was your entry point into the world with the role of Luke Cage?
That was my entry point into Luke Cage's world. I had read other comics like Incredible Hulk, Spider-Man, X-Men, Captain America. Trying to think what other ones I'd seen. Maybe Wolverine. I grew up in a small town that did not have any comic book stores, so I just had to get whatever my cousins would bring in from the larger cities. And so back in the day, they didn't have iPhones. They were reading comic books on the ride to wherever they were going. That was the entertainment. Reading comic books in the back seat and looking out the window and counting cars.
Counting cars?
Yeah, people count cars. It's like blue cars. Like how many blue cars do you count on the ride to wherever you're going? And you're counting red cars. I mean, dumb games, guys. Dumb games.
How many people were in this city, Mike?
Well, no, I'm talking on the way in between. This is not a city. I didn't grow up in a city. It was a town. All town.
Definitely.
Few thousand.
Now, everyone knows that Marvel secrecy and security is top notch. So
yeah.
I have to ask, when you auditioned for the role of Luke Cage, did you specifically know it was for that role, and how did you find out?
No, they had what they call dummy sides. And the dummy sides were they had a guy named, they had Lance on it. Lance and I'm not sure what the other character was called, and I had no idea. But I did hear they were casting Luke Cage, and then when I finished the audition, I just had a really interesting feeling that I hadn't had before, or at least at that moment, where I felt like there was some sort of symbiosis, symbiotic sort of connection with the material, and I just liked the character. And I remember thinking about it. Normally I just let things go because it's like no point. You audition back in the day and it works out, they'll give you a call. But I just was thinking to myself, I called my manager, I was like, hey, did you hear anything about that thing I went in for? And I told him to go back and just check back on it. So I just had a feeling when I auditioned for it, it just felt really, really right, Yeah.
Now, I know that you grew up a Hulk fan and some other heroes, and I know that I'm sure you meet a ton of fans that would love to see your Luke Cage standing alongside some of these other Avengers.
Yeah.
Two parts to that question. One is, which Avenger would you like Luke Cage to stand next to if you were coming back into that world? What's a cool moment that you would like to see Luke Cage with? And two, what does it mean to you when fans come up to you and geek out over your performance as Luke Cage and want to see you stand with those Avengers?
It's cool. I mean, the world of the Avengers is very large. I mean, at one comic book iteration, he was like leading the Avengers at some point. I mean, you have him running for mayor in New York City. There's so many different comic books that address the character in so many different ways. if I were popping back up, like I'm not a person that like I love that we have our own world in Netflix and we have our own sort of like street level heroes and villains, and we deal with something that feels much more tangible in terms of like accessible to the fans. And then the Avengers are like, you know, they're like fighting bigger things, right? I like the idea if I was going to pop back up. I mean, I like because there's a comic book in the beginning that had Spider-Man and Luke Cage, you know? And so I remember a long time ago, I forgot where it was. It was at some awards show, and I sat at a table with Spidey, and we chatted a bit, and I think it was a celebration for Hugh Jackman or something like that. I forgot. It was MTV, something big. I can't remember what it was. Anyway, I could see that. I could see he's in Queens, I'm in Harlem. I could see that's, you know, popping back up. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I think that'd be great. Yeah.
That's what I love about the Defenders series, though, is you kind of explained it perfectly. Is that it's street level heroes solving street level problems, and it really does feel like looking at the world outside of our window. Of course, superheroes are running around, but it really does take a more grounded take on the superhero world. But playing Luke Cage, a bulletproof black superhero, carried a lot of cultural weight. Looking back now, how do you hope the character continues to resonate with audiences that are still discovering it and loving it?
It's great that people discover it later. I mean, it's interesting because things live on, obviously, online and in streaming, which, you know, I think before streaming became a thing and people had their own libraries, it would be hard to find or access older films or older like TV series, and so you wouldn't come upon it. Now, because you have subscriptions to something, it may just be in the library, and you're like, oh, I want to see that. So I've noticed that, like, okay, we were at Netflix, and Netflix launched Luke Cage. It was huge there, but now that Disney has it back, and there's, you know, people who bought Disney and they have it, they are finding it there. I mean, you know, it doesn't matter whatever subscription you have. It's when it comes across, you're like, oh, maybe I'll explore that. So fans come into contact with Luke Cage. I talked to a fan today who, you know, Luke Cage came out in 2016. And they're fans who are right in their adolescent years, teenage years. Things mean something different to them now. So they rewatch it with different eyes. This guy was like, I watched it again. Now I'm in college, or when I watched it, I was a teenager. Now, you know, so it just means something different to them, and they revisit it and see it with a whole new look. So that's cool to have people revisit, discover things later. It's cool.
You know, that cast that you got to work with on that show was absolutely incredible. I want to point out Mahershala Ali, because he crushes that role. We know we're getting him back at some point in the MCU as Blade. But can you talk to me about sharing the screen with Mahershala?
He was great, you know, real professional. I've known Mahershala's work for years prior. Just a really solid guy. Great to share the screen with him. Professional guy, shows up to set, you know, knows what he's doing, and he's just, you know, real cool to be around. I remember when we were filming that, I think he was literally moonlighting for the movie Moonlight, and going on the weekends to Miami for a few weeks in a row to sort of, you know, do that simultaneously. So yeah, things took off, and that year he had Moonlight, he had Luke Cage, which was a big thing. I think Luke Cage was probably launching pad because we had so much attention and it was so many fans. It was nice, and then Moonlight was like the icing on the cake in terms of like, oh, who's this guy, connecting the dots, and then it just took off from there. So yeah.
Now, I love that you guys shot in New York, and Harlem was almost like a character itself in the show.
Yeah.
With the culture, the music. Did it feel that way on set? And how did the energy of that city kind of shape your performance, or help shape your performance?
Oh, it was great, man. I had lived in New York City. I'm trying to think. So when I got Luke Cage, I was living in LA. Going back to New York City, I'd been living in New York City for at least a decade, and I was in LA for a while, and then Luke Cage came along, I went back. So I had lived literally 3 blocks from where we were filming the exterior for Pop's Barbershop, you know? My apartment was like right down the block. So going back to Harlem was it's really interesting. We shot so many places that I'd already, you know, sort of lived and been hanging out and stuff. So it was really sort of like coming home, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed filming in Harlem. It feels different. Sidewalks, the smells, the music, the people, and I think when we did that, it introduced Harlem to another generation of people. Europeans, people who visited, you know, New York City, put Harlem on the map of places they wanted to visit. They get on the tour bus, they go to Harlem, they get off, they hang out. They want to see where Pop's Barbershop was. They want to see where certain things were filmed, and you know, it became a different place. But I mean, Harlem is a whole nother vibe. So I enjoyed that we were able to sort of usher in a whole nother audience to Harlem because it is a character. I mean, it's nothing like Harlem. Harlem is Harlem. Brooklyn's Brooklyn. You know, West Village is West Village. Soho, East Side. Everything's different. Harlem is really, really unique.
Yeah, they all have their different own vibes. Each borough kind of feels completely separate from the others. Now, you didn't just play Luke Cage solo. You also joined up with the other Defenders.
Yeah.
That was a fantastic show.
Yeah.
I got to ask you, talk to me about the chemistry that all you guys had on set, because at this point you had already worked with Kristen. And I think you worked with a couple of the other Defenders a little bit and popping up here and there in their series. But talk to me when all of you guys were together about any memories that stick out to you.
I always bring this memory every time I see, every time someone's asking me about what it was like. I mean, first of all, we were all working on our own shows, and we had so much work because it was like the hours were so long, and we were working really quickly because we're on a schedule. They were launching each series in a certain order, and so it was like I went in from Jessica Jones. I did like half a season, and then I went straight into like production for Luke Cage, first season 1, and then I went right into Defenders series, and then right back to season 2 of Luke Cage. So it was just like, that was sort of like, I mean, for 2 years, it's like, felt like I wasn't sleeping at all. And I was traveling back and forth. My daughter was born, so was usually young. And so I was doing a lot of traveling, a lot of Comic-Cons at the time, I think. And so I was having a great time, but I remember Defenders, there was a one chance we all had to have a little bit of time off. So we had like a couple days here, or half a day, so we could just like relax and sleep. And we were all on set at times, and I remember Charlie would be knitting, because Kristen was knitting a lot. And so Charlie started knitting too. I was like watching Charlie in his Daredevil costume, knitting next to Kristen was sort of like, that memory always stuck out of my head.
That's fantastic. I want to ask you about the sequel to Planes, because I know that you had said that during the SAG-AFTRA strike that things kind of slowed a little bit, things, it was hard to get back on track. Is the sequel on track now?
No, I honestly, I hate to say it. I think, no pun intended, but that ship has sailed because, we were in line. We were 2 weeks out of pre-production, and I spoke with Jerry. Jerry called me, and he didn't want to. He didn't feel like doing the second one. He wasn't up for the second one, and so he pulled out, and that was it. And we were 2 weeks away from it, and I don't know what happened, but I enjoyed the first one with him. I was hoping we would do the second one, and he just decided to want to do it, and that was that. Yeah. So it's unfortunate, guys. Unfortunate.
Well, I do want to ask you also about Evil before we go, because that was a fantastic series. Now, let's hear it for Evil. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah. Evil series.
That finale has been described as not trying to tie everything up, but still leaving it open for a new chapter. Did you enjoy leaving that series kind of unresolved, or did you prefer a little bit of closure?
No, I want to, I would love to continue the series, to be honest. I think there's a lot more story to tell. And we left it in a place that we could continue. We weren't expecting to be abruptly sort of canceled, but I think, we went through COVID, we went through the actors' strike, and it was tough because that time was like 6 months off in each break, in which we would have probably shot a whole season. That's about what time it takes to shoot a season. So we lost about 2 seasons within the span of the show, from 2019 to 2024, 25. So it was unfortunate. I'm very happy for the time we did get to film, and like I said, we left in a good place. We would like to continue the story, so keep our fingers crossed, because we do have a plan in place, but it's no time frame. But let's just hope that it happens,
Fingers crossed, from your mouth to God's ears. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, man.
But guys, Mike, you've been fantastic. Give yourselves a round of applause, and please meet Mike at his booth. He'll be here today and tomorrow. Yeah.
Today and tomorrow, I'll be here.
Go meet him at his booth. Get some Funko sign. Get some that merch sign, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you, man.
Pleasure.
Appreciate you, Joe.